Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Pruitt. I am the Global Chief Content and Partnership Innovation Officer for Stagwell Brand Performance Network. I am here in partnership as Stagwell with Infinite Reality, which is an immersive technology company that builds experiences for fans. And that has really been the thread that we have been cultivating through this expert series that we've had over the past week. Thrilled to be here. We have explored some very interesting topics of fandom and everything from research about the archetype of a fan, what it means to be a super fan, how brands are participating, and how that requires so much trust in cultivating and nourishing that experience for fans. And now we're going to talk a little bit with our featured guest, Shelby Larkin, who from SoFi, who I'm going to let her introduce herself. But thrilled that you're here because, you'll say it, but SoFi is essentially the crown jewel of not only Los Angeles, but in terms of stadiums and places where people want to go, it's an incredible experience. I have been there. I'm from LA. So Shelby, will you just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about, your role at SoFi, and then we'll kind of get into it and talk a little bit more about, inclusivity, how developing fan experiences work. Right, because as SoFi, Shelby has a slightly different perspective than we've been talking about so far, which is also really interesting and unique because the way that so many of us experience our favorite passions of sports, music, entertainment, gaming exists in these venues. So, Shelby, please tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thank you for having me. I am Shelby Larkin, and my official title, let's see if I can remember it, is Director of Global Partnership Development for SoFi Stadium and Hollywood Park, which, as you mentioned, is located in Inglewood, California. We opened our doors in September of 2020, quite an interesting time in terms of fan experience and welcoming fans. So the first NFL season, it was just the teams playing. So we've learned a lot just in the past year. We hosted Super Bowl in 2022. The Rams won. But in terms of my role there, I'm in charge of all of our partnerships across the entire 298-acre campus. So just to back up a little bit to give context to those who have not been to the stadium. So SoFi Stadium itself sits within Hollywood Park. Hollywood Park historically was a racetrack. It was a very iconic destination in Los Angeles, and over the years just, lost its fervor. And our owner and chairman, Stan Kroenke, who owns the Los Angeles Rams, as well as several other sports teams, had the vision to build a global sports and entertainment destination. And so we really think of ourselves as the premier sports and entertainment complex in the world. So we really pride ourselves in the events that we've had so far and the events that are coming. So we'll be the LA site for the World Cup in 2026. We may welcome Super Bowl back very soon, within the next 10 years. And then also we'll be hosting the opening and closing ceremonies for the Olympic Games in 2028. In addition to the stadium itself, which is about 70 of the acres, as I mentioned, we also have a performance venue, YouTube Theater, which is a 6,000 seat venue. And then we have a retail district that's coming online later this year. We also have residences. So we have 314 apartment units that are opening this year. We also have commercial office space. So we think of ourselves as a smart city. And how to serve all the different fans that are coming to our site. To date, we've had about 4 million guests, and that's across 20 home NFL games per season, as well as we'll have a number of concerts. As you mentioned, you've been to a few. And this year, we're really building out our soccer programming as well. We have WrestleMania coming up. We're never lacking on events. We have at least like 200 events per year across the campus.
That's amazing. That's also a lot of fans coming through in their different sort of genres, verticals, passions, things they're excited about, people they're excited about. I think it's an interesting journey to cultivate and curate all these fan experiences, right? You have so many different types of audiences coming through. And the truth is, there's a really interesting, I've lived in Los Angeles for 18 years. So I was around while they were trying to find a stadium or a place so that they could move sports team back to LA, right? And it was a really big deal because, trying to find a footprint in the city, trying to solicit all the, the necessary permits and requirements, but mostly to get the community on board.
Yes.
So you mentioned sort of you just mentioned sort of the environment that has been created, but it would be really interesting for you to talk a little bit about that community aspect, because there was a lot of thought and thoughtfulness that was put into the development of that entire. It is basically a smart city. Mini ecosystem. When you go down there, it is so spectacular, but it's in the heart of a community where it was really important to make sure that you could be authentic in that community. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's a very important point. I mean, we dropped, we changed the entire landscape for Los Angeles, but specifically for the community of Inglewood, where 80% of the residents are Black and brown people. And so we really wanted to make sure that they feel welcome when it comes to whether it's coming to a game or whether it's just coming to campus, as we call it, we have a beautiful lake, a 15-acre lake. So we invite residents to come. We offer free community programs, and that's really important to us, to extend just that olive branch of you're welcome to come any day, anytime, not just for an event. This is for everyone to enjoy. And so community engagement is a top priority for us in everything that we do, whether it's planning for a Rams or Chargers game. We just hosted our first music festival, Rolling Loud, which is the largest hip hop festival. But, we engage, like we have several subdivisions that surround the stadium. So we have weekly regular calls with the owners and the HOA to let them know what's going on. We offer them free tickets. We also have hosted graduations, homegoing ceremonies, things that you wouldn't necessarily think would be at Hollywood Park or SoFi Stadium, just to really build that relationship. And we also host community job fairs. So, clearly we have a need for a lot of staff, and so we want to look locally first. So any way that we can really pour back into the community, it's something that is top priority for us. And then we've also created some of our tentpole events. So we have a summer bash, which happens every June or July, and now a winter bash, which benefits specifically the residents in the community.
It's amazing, right? Because you think about, as you're developing any sort of environment, the importance of welcoming the people that have been there, right? And that includes, Infinite Reality, right? The first experience they ever built was Burning Man, right? The fandom, the passion, the genuine love of their burner community, right? And how everyone can express themselves is so important. And I think, the ability to do that with a structure and a piece of real estate, right, in the real world, which is something that's very tactile for people, right? An immersive community, that is technology driven. It's interesting, in the generations that follow us, there will be no difference, right? But in the world that we exist in, and the world that you exist in, and the world that the teams exist in, and the artists exist in the real world, right? It's really important, right? Because these are also largely a number of their fans, right? They may not be able to go to all the games, but they are the fans of these teams, of these artists, of these festivals, and that is incredibly important. So there's the business of the business, which is always interesting, but I think it's the people behind the business that are also very interesting. So I would love for you to talk a little bit more about your journey, like how you got here, because so much of one's ability to sort of see the world, curate the world, create these experiences as people walk through the doors or before they walk through the doors of SoFi, right, is going to be informed and accelerated through kind of who you are, where you've been, the places you've lived, all that kind of good stuff. Can you just tell us a little bit more about you?
Yeah, sure. And we spoke a little bit before, so I don't have a traditional path. So I grew up in Nashville before Nashville was cool. So before Nashville even had an NFL team. And so I started working at the local CBS affiliate, the new station there, and I was working on a show that's similar to like a Kelly and Ryan.
Yeah.
And that really opened my eyes to just what was possible within media specifically. I grew up in a household where my dad was a doctor, my mom was a teacher, and it was like you're either one of those or an engineer. Like that's what
These
you
are
do.
your options.
Yeah, these are the options. And so when I started working at the news station, it was just this whole new world of, oh my gosh, I can be creative, I can tell important stories, I can connect with people, which has been a common thread throughout my career. And so I went to college at Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. I tried one summer on Wall Street and was like, yeah, this isn't for me. And quickly, decided to pursue the TV route on the production side. So I did internships at CNN and ABC News, which led me after graduation to moving to New York to work at ABC News on the assignment desk, working overnight, like going in at midnight. At that time, we were at war, so it was a very challenging time. But it really helped me just to be scrappy and to learn how to be very entrepreneurial in terms of going and getting stories and making sure they were covered on whether it was World News Tonight or Good Morning America. And then after a while, I was like tired of the hard news grind, moved to LA and decided to pursue daytime talk and working on red carpets. So you can see this is very different. I'm getting to sports and entertainment.
I like it. No, by the way, also a very windy journey myself. So
Yes.
It's highly relatable.
Well, it's interesting because at that time, partnerships or like
Yeah.
what I do now didn't really exist.
Yeah.
So I remember being in New York in my little, 400 square foot walk up and watching American Idol and watching, if you all remember, the coffee.
Thank you for your viewership.
Yes,
We
yes.
appreciate you.
Right. The Coca-Cola cup
Yeah.
on the judge panel. So that was
Yeah.
like the first iteration of partnerships or brand
Yeah.
partnerships within TV or integrated in TV programming. And so my journey, I was in LA for a number of years and then moved to Chicago to work on a show that was produced by Telepictures Productions, which
Yes, we
We
share that
share
as a
that.
career journey moment.
yeah, so I was a producer on a show there, and then I decided it was time to, I always knew I wanted to move to the business side of media and entertainment. I just wasn't sure exactly where I fit in on the business side. So ultimately I decided to go to business school. I went to Columbia Business School to obtain my MBA. And while I was there, this partnerships thing, media started to figure it out. How do we monetize this? And so at that time, I interned at NBC and worked at 30 Rock and helped to create these 360 integrations across Bravo, Sprout, NBC, the OG channel as we call it. And that's when I really started to understand, okay, this is where I see myself. And so post MBA, I stayed in production for a while and ultimately landed back at Telepictures, but on the business side and focused on branded content and partnerships across daytime talk and syndicated television. So after doing that for about 6 years, which was great, it was rewarding. You get
Which,
a car.
by the way, Shelby's being a little, she's not sharing too much, but it was shows like Ellen in her
Yes.
real heyday. Like, these were big, giant shows in daytime television where advertisers were trying to figure out how to partner.
Mm-hmm.
And with partners like Ellen, Ellen is talent. She's also highly appealing.
Yes.
And so the nuances of working with talent and the show and the EPs and crafting the experience for the audience so they're still having a great time and participating, but then also working with a brand who's like, hey, here's what I want to say and here's what I want to do is a real art form.
Yes.
So
it's very nuanced.
it's important to understand that about like now here, right? You're speaking multiple languages all the time. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you,
I'm
but
glad.
I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, no, thank you for pointing that out because that was really, it's at a time where you want to, customers, fans, they're a lot more savvy these days. So it's like brands want to integrate in a very authentic way. And that leads to our conversation just about fandom in general. So it was like, how can we create content that feels very authentic to, whether it's the Ellen viewer or the TMZ viewer. Yeah. And so that was a really great learning experience for me in terms of just understanding the world of partnerships. And then after about 6 or 7 years, I was really ready to broaden my horizons beyond television. My entire career had been in TV at that point. And I just happened to see a post online about SoFi Stadium.
You're one of those people?
I am one of those
Wow,
people. It
that's
actually
amazing.
happens. And so I didn't think much of it. I just, I was like, let me shoot my shot. And I applied, and several interviews later, was offered the opportunity. And I mean, I had followed the journey or the story of SoFi Stadium and the idea of LA being the home of bringing the Rams back to LA, and I wanted to be a part of that story. And so I, unlike many of my colleagues, I had zero background in sports. But what I brought to the table was my background in entertainment, my background in media. And I mean, partnerships are partnerships. It's just really learning the various assets and the language and the key players. So then that led me to where I am today.
That's amazing. It is so interesting, right? Because again, through all of those moments in time, right, you picked up, different skill sets, different cultural sensibilities, right? Mm-hmm. The environments in which you work in when you work in entertainment, right? Very different type of industry than banking, for example, right? There's a silent cadence and expectation to how it works, right? And so getting to understand that and then how to translate that into actionable revenue is, an expectation of the people you work for, but also something that can be challenging to do. I mean, even my own experience, I started out as a Japanese major in college. I was from a small town in Oregon called Ashland, teeny tiny little town, never been anywhere on a plane until I was 17 years old, right? Didn't grow up with much, ate Spam and cottage cheese and fruit cocktail for dinner. Had been on a church bus trip to, Tijuana to build an orphanage, and that was about the extent of my travel. And I decided to become a Japanese major, and so then I basically ended up on this big bird on the way to Japan, like teaching English to little junior high school kids, and talk about cultural immersion, an immersive fan experience. First of all, as a teacher in Japan, you are like a piece of talent. Like you walk up and the kids are all waiting for you like every day, like basically screaming off the decks. It's really fun. But, then to go on into sports business, I worked on World Cup for MasterCard back in Japan. And then I went and started working for Simon Fuller on the second season of American Idol, doing those deals. Before they were being done, before they were being monetized, owning music rights and talent rights and touring rights. No idea what I was doing. I was like 28 years old, like making everything up, right? But reverse engineering what I had learned in the sports business into like actually how to make money. And those on-air rights with Coca-Cola and AT&T and Ford and like kind of driving all this business. And then, again, sort of then living in New York, then Mark Burnett was like, hey, come do this for us. And so I moved to LA and I worked on his shows and Contender and Rockstar and like immersing myself in these worlds of like boxing, like, hanging out in a boxing ring and like, East LA is like, and I walk in, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm cool. Right? Like Sugar Ray and Sylvester Stallone were chilling. But like all the boxers, and they all come from these different environments. So translating their ethos and authenticity into a deal with like Miller Coors. Right? Like the respect and the credibility and the importance of really being like true to both sides is so important. Right? And now, fast forward through lots of other things, failed startups, like all the stuff, Warner Brothers. I worked in digital before you did. I came in sales development to teach the Ellen Show how to package digital with television. Like that was my job.
And you did a great job.
Thank you very much. I helped make everyone a lot of money. Okay,
yes,
everyone made a lot of money. I didn't make all the money. They made all the money. Still, and it was really fascinating, right? And then started an agency and sort of did that stuff, and now I'm here. And it's the ability to kind of connect those dots, speak those languages, understand cultures, listen. Right? Really listen to what a partner wants. Really listen. I've been working for the last year and a half with the founder, Jocelyn Cooper, who is also going to come but unable to come for a personal reason. I've been working with Matthew and Jocelyn for the last year and a half on Let's Get Free, which is their new platform for Black, Brown, Asian, LGBTQ, AI plus communities, youth communities, right? How to build out a community for modern day that creates more transparency in education and entertainment. And the ability to kind of try to learn and be curious about those environments, I think is such an important skill, which you clearly have because you have done all these things. I would ask you, right? So you're bringing in, again, all these fans across all, WrestleMania,
Yes.
wildly different.
From Rolling Loud.
Yeah. I mean, just, like when you are kind of curating and cultivating these you obviously do the large partnerships, which
Sure.
you should talk about. Like the partners for SoFi are no joke, right?
Mm-hmm.
Legit. But, then each of these teams, so like Jen Prince, who we share as a mutual best friend, she runs commercial partnerships for the Rams. You're also bringing those partners in, right? So how do you kind of navigate those waters? How does that work? How does that all come to be?
Well, it's definitely a dance. As you know, it's a delicate dance. And like you said, it's really like listening to everyone and understanding the needs of everyone. So you want to understand all the stakeholders, whether it's, the brands or the teams who are great partners of ours. But you also just want to be true and authentic to the fan. So it's like, what can elevate the fan experience while also delivering and, checking those boxes. But we know if we deliver an elevated experience, we have this amazing backdrop. SoFi Stadium is the largest. It's one of one. It's the largest and the only indoor-outdoor stadium in NFL. So we know that we have put the best tech in the stadium, and we can go into that a little bit later if you want as well. So we're always thinking of how can we, it's not just coming to a game, it's not just coming to a Beyonce concert, it's how do we create a once-in-a-lifetime moment for you every time that you come. And then how do we leverage our brand partners to do that? So we've been able to incorporate some innovative strategies using, AR and VR to do that. But also it's like, how can we engage you before you ever leave home, while you're on your way, while you're there, you have an exceptional experience. But then also after you leave, how do we enhance that experience even more so that you're ready to come back?
Yeah. It's funny. So we, one of our agencies is called Around, AR Around. They partnered with the Rams, with Jen's team, and they did the largest snowball fight ever, like AR snowball fight on Christmas Day. And the interesting part is you could experience in the stadium. And so, if you all go to a stadium, most often, like, you're like, I can't get any reception. I can't call my friend. I can't send the video. I can't upload to the socials so everyone knows I'm here. And at SoFi, everything's like lightning speed. Right? And then they have a giant screen, if I can help paint the picture, this giant, how big is that screen?
The largest. It's 70,000 square feet of digital LED. It is the largest. It's one of one. It has 4K from end to end. It's the only video board of its size and resolution in all of sports. Yeah.
And it's amazing, right? So they do, the entertainment. I would love for you to talk just because it's so visceral and people will understand it. You did the partnership with Avatar for the Rams. The Rams did the partnership with Avatar. That experience was so incredible, right? Can you talk a little bit? So when you're envisioning, like you're partnering with the Rams, you're partnering with the talent or the management team as the artists are coming in. There are so many ways to, it's like either snap codes or, open web QR codes, so like versus systems or around. Like there's all these ways to create this sort of more immersive experience in what is a more traditional environment. Like, how do you think about doing that? And then maybe talk a little bit about the Avatar experience, just because it's a cultural touch point that like people can understand.
Sure. I think when you're thinking about the infinity screen, it's a dual-sided screen. It's like 4 stories high. So it just...
Isn't it the size of like a jumbo jet or somebody said, or like it's like, there's some like parallel that's like wildly beyond the imagination.
Yes. It weighs over 2 million pounds.
Yeah.
This is the type of thing that you have to experience. It's hard to really describe it, as you know, but it's great because it just enhances, it makes anything that's happening on the field or, a concert stage, it just enhances that experience and makes it very immersive. But what we've, in order to utilize that technology, it's always like, how can we raise the bar? So how can we use, working with our partners, we have integrated, AR capabilities. So while you're waiting for the show to start or the game to start, you can pull out your phone and, there are different interactive elements just to enhance the fan experience while you're there and engage people in a different way. But I think in terms of like Avatar, I can't take credit for that because that's the Rams.
I know.
But for us, it's like, how do we, everybody knows the kiss cam, right?
Yeah.
When you go to a game, but it's like, how do we change that? Like, what's the next, how do we level up from that?
Yeah.
So then we're able to use, AR features in order to, instead of like we put the camera on you and you kiss your significant others, we put the camera on you and we turn you into an avatar character.
Yeah.
So, it's something that's shocking to see, but it's something that you can also capture and share, and it can go viral. So it's just, again, it's something that's unexpected. So we're always thinking of how to utilize the tech throughout the stadium, throughout the entire campus, in order to elevate the fan experience. But also, I think just going back to the inclusive piece, when we talk about just, when you think about just including the community, a lot of fans, when the first time they come to the stadium, they don't know what to expect. And so we want to lower that barrier of entry in terms of even when it comes to utilizing and enjoying the technology. So it's like anybody can do this. Anybody can whip out their cell phone, point it at a QR code, and then start to engage in an AR experience. So now it's like we're moving that conversation forward, not only for just enjoying the venue, but also just enjoying the tech and the experience that we've built there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So on our first panel, we had George Youngblood, Gerald Youngblood, who is the CMO of Lenovo in North America. And he was really talking about how Lenovo is really trying to create access, and Infinite Reality says that as well, like access for all. It feels like when you're creating these environments, right? The especially in a community, right? The access for all is really important, right? As a sort of through line to what you're doing and what you're trying to create. How do you invite your partners into that experience? Like, what is the expectation of them? If you're going to come be a partner with SoFi Stadium, here's how we expect you to show up in the community in sort of this notion of access, right, and inclusivity. Sure. How do you ensure that connectivity and through line runs through them as well, right, as representatives of your brand as partners?
Absolutely. Well, what's been great, at least in my time with SoFi Stadium and Hollywood Park, is that every partner, they want to be involved in the community piece. So any sort of partnership package or campaign that we put together, community engagement is something that they're asking for. They're asking for ways that they can serve the community, and STEAM and STEM education is a high priority for all of them. So what we do is our team, we're always coming up with programming with our community engagement team internally, and then we're sharing with our partners, hey, we're offering this opportunity. Would you like to come on board? One prime example of that is for the past year, we've had the Kinsey Collection on display throughout the stadium. So the Kinsey Collection is the largest privately owned collection of African-American art and artifacts. Something you wouldn't necessarily expect to see when you go see a game. And it's privately owned by Shirley and Bernard Kinsey. And so it was really important to our ownership as well as all leadership to offer this as an experience for fans that come, and to, again, have that unexpected moment, but also for something that the local community could come enjoy. And so once we knew we were going to launch that, we went out to each of our partners and said, hey, here's an opportunity for you to lean in with the community. And so we had Google Pixel, one of our main cornerstone partners, come in and help to curate an experience for local students from underserved public schools to be able to have a day where they had a full experience. They got to sit in the stadium, see a huge presentation that included the infinity screen, but they also got to tour the collection and hear from the Kinsey family. And so that's just one example. But even with our retail district that's coming online, we're opening COSM. If you're familiar with it, this will be the first immersive entertainment venue that COSM, they currently have like a design experience center in Utah. And so they are really behind the technology for a lot of the IMAX screens that you go and see, or if you go to your favorite amusement park, they build these larger than life screens and experiences. And so we're going to have the first consumer facing venue in our retail district, which has already started construction and will open next year. So we're already working with them on how can we include the Inglewood community, and again, make this so that it's not only a global destination that people, if they're coming to Los Angeles, they're going to want to go to, but so that the doors are open for the local community to know that they're welcome as well. And I think it means a lot for COSM to have a location, their first location in Inglewood. It says a lot.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, it's interesting, the Google example Pixel, right? It's really sort of in the spirit of connecting, what Google's trying to show up with Google Pixel, which is that it is the best, and they're not my client, but I happen to know this because I pay attention to these things. But like their real focus is on skin tone. The ability to pick up skin tone better than any other piece of technology. And so, combining that with sort of their CSR and corporate responsibility and how they're, want to be part of that community and use your partnership as a way to embrace, activate, show up in a way that is beneficial. All those things come together, right? And that's the kind of partnership aspect, right? Where you're able to help figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we have right now around 30 partners in terms of just like, and they range from like your, traditional sports sponsorships, our cornerstone partners who are partnered across the entire 298 acres, as well as, some smaller, more tactical partners. But it's really about authenticity. And so when we're talking to brands, when you come to the stadium, as you know, it aesthetically it looks different from your
it's
typical.
Stunning.
Yes, and we are very careful in terms of who we partner with and that they understand and they get the vision. And so we want it to be an authentic partnership 360. So it's not just about slapping logos on spaces, but it's also about how can we, when we're looking at their corporate pillars, how do they align with our vision as well?
Yeah. It's kind of interesting, right? Because when you have these venues that exist in cities, they all sort of have a personality, right? People assign them a personality, right? Like Staples Center was Staples Centers, and now it's crypto, and I don't know what to make of that. Like I can't understand the personality of the crypto center, right? But I understand, even though, Staples Center is a store, right? A brand. But like there was a sort of a personality to Staples Center as part of the local downtown community, right? And we all kind of knew what to do with that. Or the Forum, or all these different kind of places have these sort of personalities, and they precede and live on beyond whoever has the naming rights.
Yes.
And SoFi sort of has this, like, it almost like rises up out of the ground when you come up. You're like, whoa, this is amazing. But then depending on the experience you're walking into, I've had the good fortune, of being able to go to several different types of events. Like I got to go to Super Bowl, which was an entirely different experience than when I went to the Kenny Chesney concert, which was so fun. And, the experience that was created for you as a fan, right, was multiple artists, but also they had this area called the Sandbar. Right? And the sandbar did not have sand. It was just, white flooring. But like down there, it was like you were kind of like in the jam and you could like dance around and it was super fun. Right? But that was part of the immersive experience for me in a way that like when I go to other places or other shows or whatever, each experience as a fan kind of brings to life its own thing. So like how do you navigate that? Or, maybe not you specifically, but kind of how does the team, the environment navigate kind of the different nuances of like if Rihanna shows up versus, a festival versus Kenny Chesney or, Taylor Swift's coming. That's going to be mayhem in a good way, but it's going to be crazy. Yes. Or the Weeknd. When the Weeknd was there, totally different kind of show, right? Yeah. So how do you navigate that fan experience so that everyone kind of feels included, if you will, but also they're each having their own individual experience?
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, to the team's credit, so the NFL team, so the Chargers and the Rams, they both have very distinct brand identities as NFL teams. And I mean, I have to give all the credit to their respective teams. They really lean into what their run of show, because again, it's more than just a football game, and that's what's been beautiful to see what Jim Prince has brought to the Rams. It's really a production. We're already in Los Angeles. We are already wanting to deliver an elevated experience when it comes to just fandom in general, but the teams have really found ways to just, again, from curating from their tailgate all the way to, the end of the game, when you're leaving the game, how to really be true to each team's respective brand identity. And then they work really well with our internal team to make that experience come to life, whether that's using, tech or digital, or just making sure we have great customer service so that we can serve fans.
Big deal.
Yes.
How do I get from there to here? Because
Yeah.
it's super big and complicated.
Right, it is. And then, shout out to our operations team, which also helps to bring that vision to life. So even if it's beyond an NFL game, if it is the weekend or, when we welcome Taylor Swift, our operation team, along with our programming team, they are working on these events, months, sometimes years in advance, really working with each of these teams and creative directors to really see how we can transform our space to meet that need. And it's crazy to see the efficiency in which we do it. I mean, we have gone from like football game on one day to 2 days later to a soccer match with putting down real grass, ripping that up, and then laying down a floor for a concert. Like, I've seen that happen. It still blows my mind.
Yeah.
But to your point, we're always thinking the fan experience is always top of mind. And I think even just beyond the stadium, we still have YouTube Theater, which is still evolving in terms of figuring out the energy around and what that experience is at YouTube Theater, which I also highly recommend. It's a totally different feel, but also has state-of-the-art tech. But it's a more intimate venue. So we've had everything there from the NFL honors to, we recently just had the second year of the Billboard Women in Music.
I was going to say the Billboard Awards.
Yes, and then, we'll have, a concert. We had Jay Shetty there last week. So that space, we're doing 2 to 3 events a week there. And so the team there is also really good about just understanding who the fan is that's coming for that particular event, and how do we reconfigure or how do we shape the space so that it really meets the need of the fan.
Yeah. It seems like what SoFi and sort of the adjacent participants, if you will, have done really well is to bring together people with different backgrounds.
Yes.
Right? Not taking endemically like people picking sports, sports people, and technology people picking technology people, and venue and stadium people picking venue and stadium. Like, really bringing together sort of this group of people that have this vast, sort of different types of experiences that then can kind of bring it all together, which is also interesting, to create this evolved experience of what it means to walk through the doors of SoFi.
It's very true. Every time I talk to a colleague and you hear their story, you heard my story, which is not what you would expect, not traditional at all, not cookie cutter. And all of my colleagues, it's very similar. You'll talk to somebody like, oh, I used to be in the CIA. Oh, okay, great. Oh, I was Secret Service. Or, you just, or I toured with this person, or I used to be, an artist myself. So it's just interesting because you are able to, everybody's leaning on their various experiences, which is the beauty of it, because we are touching so many different facets of sports and entertainment. So you need a melting pot of people. And I do think it's also important that our team is reflective of LA and the fans that we're serving, and that's something that we're also very aware of. And that was one of the reasons that really led me, when I had the opportunity to join the team, to really lean into that as well, because we want it to be inclusive, and so our internal team needs to reflect that.
Yeah. And it's such a priority, right, for so many companies, across the board. I lead all of our supplier diversity for our business, and call it Partners for Progress, Assembly, which is one of our largest media agencies. And it's really about how can we be a better partner to be more inclusive and invest in owned and operated companies of diverse. But what's the composition of those companies? Who's getting the money? Where does it go? All of these questions are really important to both be able to ask, but also to be able to respond to, right? And and then how you're reflecting that, which I think is an ongoing effort, by so many. But I love the fact that you are in this community, and it was a bit of a slog to get to this space, right? Is the truth, right? This has been a long story, a long road. You followed it, and then you got the opportunity. What I I just have a question. Like when they called you, what did you do? Were you like, oh my gosh, or they emailed you or
I
whatever?
got an email and I was like, oh, okay, is this real? You know?
Yeah, I'm very. I cannot believe that somebody got like an interview off of LinkedIn.
I know.
I mean, I believe in LinkedIn, but I'm
I
just
know.
like, I'd put in
No,
a
it
few
was-
resumes in the past. Not right now, everybody. I'm good.
Yeah.
But like, so the fact I was like, does this thing work? Is it on?
Yeah, it was so funny because it was literally like a Friday night. It was like 11 o'clock. And I was like, let me just look on LinkedIn and just see what's out there. And, again, I submitted, didn't think anything of
Yeah.
it. And then, within the next week, I received an email. It was just kind of a very short,
Yeah.
like, one sentence.
Response.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I understand now because we are insanely busy.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wow, this is interesting. So I was like, again, very skeptical, just as you. I'm like, okay, well, I'll, take the meeting and just see. So I had the first call and again, really realized, I'm really out of my wheelhouse after having that first call. Because really, I think a lot of it too is understanding the scope of the project.
Yeah.
And so not only was I new to sports,
Yeah.
but also just understanding the entire landscape when it came to Hollywood Park.
Yeah.
And everything that
Going
exists.
into that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it can be a bit overwhelming to hear. Even when I hear myself saying it, it's like you have to really see it and experience it.
Yeah.
And so, that first call, it felt really good. And then that led to a second and another and another. So I was like, to me, it was a once in a lifetime opportunity to really expand my experience and my horizons and really take myself outside of my comfort zone because I was very comfortable in television. I could have stayed where I was. I loved what I was doing there. I could do it, with my hands tied behind my back. Like I was very comfortable in that role, but I wanted to stretch myself.
Yeah.
And again, I think just going back to that piece of having the opportunity and knowing that I could be a voice for Angelenos and people in this moment because I know what the project means for greater Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And, so much respect to our partners at LinkedIn because it's really about the recruiters on the other side. So I was always so curious. I'm like, you got it. It's amazing.
Yes.
But I think it's also, you made the point about this being global and really a global destination. Obviously in the community of LA, very well known now, right? Even in year 2, right? The migration into SoFi is pretty significant. And as this community sort of continues to develop, it'd be really interesting. How are you thinking about helping the broader global community discover SoFi as a destination, how to kind of make that, accessible to them, et cetera? Like how is that, what's that vision look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something that we're still in the early stages of trying to answer. When we think about leaning into just how to, like at scale, let people experience SoFi. So whether that's through, technology, whether that's through streaming, whether that's through, utilizing Web3 to do that, we want to be very strategic because we know that there are a lot of options that are emerging, but we really want to be thoughtful about what does that look like? How will that evolve in 10 years from now? And the thing about SoFi Stadium and just the surrounding property is that we're still we're very young. Honestly, we've only been open to fans for 2 years because the first year doesn't count. And we're started, like when I started, I think we had like 75 staff and now we're at like over 500. So we're growing very quickly. So we want to be very thoughtful in terms of how we present ourselves to the world, whether it's, on the web or through some sort of interactive technology. So, for us, it's really, at this moment, it's getting people to come and experience it. Because even a lot of people in LA still haven't been.
Yeah, of course.
This whole idea of going to Inglewood is new. First it was all Hollywood or downtown. And now it's like just educating people and trying to get them to see the stadium. But I think hosting events like Super Bowl, as we continue to host these iconic, like, global events, that is shining a spotlight on the stadium as well as everything else that we're doing there.
Yeah, certainly the Olympics and World Cup.
Yes, and so I think by the time we get there, and I think working with our partners, whether it's FIFA or the Olympics committee, then we will work with them to figure out what sort of fan experiences they want to build out.
Yeah.
But we're still figuring that out in terms of SoFi Stadium and Hollywood Park as its own entity.
And, all the infrastructure investment that's being poured into LAX, right, to accommodate the traffic that they're expecting. So that'll probably be helpful.
That is definitely a
on the radar
that we are having more than you know.
I believe it. I really also think so much of exposure to SoFi comes from social media, right? So. And, it's funny, obviously I follow everyone on all the platforms, right? Everywhere from the business side of it on LinkedIn, right? When, Jen's posting or, now I'll be following you and we'll be friends on LinkedIn.
Yes, of course.
But when everybody's posting, right, about kind of the different deals and the different partnerships that are being made, but then from the fan experience, right, the ability to share, evolve that experience outside of the venue. Like when I have a daughter with special needs, and so we have an au pair that lives with us, and she's German, and she was a huge BTS fan, huge. So when the BTS crew came through, the socials were bananas.
Yes.
Bananas, right?
Yes.
And so all these people inside SoFi, which normally wouldn't have access to their technology because it would be shut down because there were too many people trying to live stream basically their own experience on Instagram and Snap and everywhere else. Was insane. Do you find that just really kind of feeds that pipeline, right? And in such a significant way because it does expose so many people and most people aren't thinking about, I wouldn't normally have reception in there. But the reverse engineering of that is you have reception in there. You can really light it up if you want.
Yeah, and I mean, you raised an excellent point because if you go to our social media right now, so if you go to Hollywood Park social media or SoFi Stadium social media, it's not what you would think. We are still figuring out our social media strategy, but we've been able to leverage and benefit from our location and the fact that we have every A-list celebrity coming to our venue for these iconic moments.
Yeah.
And so that's really helped us when it comes to just getting the word out about SoFi Stadium and what the fan experience is there. So, when we have, Kim Kardashian who wants to come to a game and you have, LeBron James has a suite, Jay-Z has a suite, Magic Johnson. So all the people who are the top tastemakers and influencers, they're actually putting it out there. So LeBron James recently celebrated his birthday and we curated a private experience for him to come and play whatever video game, his favorite video game on the infinity screen.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I mean, what do you get for the guy that has everything? So one of his friends, you get to come sit in your suite, have the entire stadium, 70,000 seats to yourself.
Oh my gosh,
and play your favorite
hilarious.
video game. So again, it's these elevated experiences, right?
Yeah.
And so he put that on his Instagram. I mean, we got more pickup from that than, probably anything, being honest, that we posted on our social media, especially that week, right?
Sure.
So we definitely benefit from that, or even like you said, your au pair, or when they come and have these moments that they're going to remember forever, and they share it. That word of mouth, but doing it through social media is something that really helps us.
Yeah, I mean it is pretty fascinating when you get some of those artists in there, especially for a certain fan base.
Yes.
Right? I can only imagine, when Taylor comes to town and all the Swifties are in there, or, my 9-year-old's current obsession is Blackpink.
Oh, yeah.
So, when Blackpink emerges on the scene and I get, Mommy, I want to go. The social kind of chatter, feedback, content coming out of that environment almost, makes it familiar to these kids, right, that have never been, for the most part, their parents obviously need to buy their tickets, but it's so fascinating because it's familiar to this generation of people who typically wouldn't go unless their parents take them, but because of the fan experience that's being created when Harry Styles was here, right, people watching for when he did the call outs, right? And then all the social stuff that came out of that. It's just a fascinating, almost the branding of the stadium
Yes.
is such an interesting experiment in like permeating culture in a way that hasn't really existed before, right?
Right.
And to be truthful, like no one's like, oh my god, I like when Oracle came out, right? Like people weren't like that. That didn't exist, you know.
Right.
So you were kind of existing also in this really unique time in this community, and then inviting in a new generation of people by virtue of the fact that like you also have access to all this technology.
Yeah, and so that's why we do have a very robust analytics team, and so they're really
Yeah.
leaning into that and curating all of those responses that we're seeing on social. So it's not so much us pumping out the messaging. We're
Curating it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so people are the fans are letting us know what they're loving, what we can do better, and so we're listening. So
Yeah.
before we like really put ourselves out there
Yeah.
as the venue, because again, we're still evolving, we're still in the early stages. Right now, we're gathering information, and so we're very fortunate because we have so many different types of events. And to your point, it's like, I mean, we like this past Friday we had Billy Joel and Stevie Nicks.
I saw that on the socials.
Yeah, we had Paul
was there.
McCartney, and then you have your favorite celebrity, or like Bad Bunny made a surprise appearance at Billboard Women in Music. Who knew? He just rolled up, or Kanye or Ye will just roll up,
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's on the way,
Yeah.
so we get ready,
Yeah.
So we're very fortunate in that sense. And so right now it's just knowing that we are covering really every demo with all of our events, and we feel very grateful for that. We're listening to the fans, and some of the fans just happen to be like these, top influencers, and using that to really shape how we make changes, and how we present the fan experience, whether that's working with the teams on a game day, or what events we are bringing to the stadium that we haven't brought before. Like we're bringing Monster Jam to the stadium in April. Not necessarily something you would think of.
I'm
but
supposed to go to WrestleMania.
Okay, yeah, it's going to be a good time.
with my 13-year-old son. It's going to be hilarious.
It'll be a good time.
I'm looking forward to it, but I've never been to WrestleMania. It's going to be quite an experience.
Right.
But I'll probably be a giant fan by the time I leave. I'm gonna have a sign and maybe like wear some merchandise.
Yeah, you and me both. I'll be right there with you. And it's interesting because we learn so much after we have certain events. Like we had our first soccer event last year, and just going back to the point about just fans and their needs and wants are different. Like the energy and the fan expectations, even down to just like F&B, like the food and beverage that the fans wanted. It was just so different compared to Super Bowl, which was just a few months prior.
Yeah.
So we are learning. We like to say, we're building the plane while
as you're flying it.
Yes, yeah. We're
flying
as
the plane we all
as we build it. Yeah.
Oh well, Shelby, it was so amazing to talk with you. Appreciate all the insights, all the kind of education, learning. You're really kind of a real life immersive experience, which is amazing. And I think that this what you are doing in that space and in that community is going to be really something to watch. And so much heart for kind of that community inclusion and what will come from as you open all of these continue to open all these experiences up, and invite the rest of Los Angeles and the rest of the world in. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you. It went by quickly. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everybody.